Hello all and welcome back to the Pipe Cottage. Oh, is this evermore going to be a fun and instructive, educational episode. Tomorrow is my birthday. I usually don't make videos on Sunday, but tomorrow is my birthday, the usual day when I make Pipe Cottage videos, and so I figured I would get this out of the way so tomorrow I don't have to worry about this. So glad you stopped by. I want to reinstate a series that I started a couple of years ago entitled Books and Pipes, where we talk about books and we get our pipes together, and hopefully you're smoking your pipe and enjoying that while you're listening to the video. But I have a couple of things I want to say before we get into the book I want to talk about for today's episode. I'm no longer comfortable having two channels, one under the Dr. Alan Harrelson name and one under the Pipe Cottage. It feels nasty. It feels as if I'm trying to hide a part of who I am, a part of my interest, and relegate that to people who are interested in learning one side of my character, and those who simply just want to talk about pipes. I don't like that. I want to integrate all that I'm interested in, all the things that I want to share with people in one place. And so I've tried it. I tried having two channels, and I don't like it. I don't like it just feels dishonest. And I know that we have a diverse audience of people here at the Pipe Cottage channel, but I really don't care that much about diversity anymore. Been through a lot the past few days, and diversity is not really on my radar. So this channel will be talking about conservatism. It will be talking about Christianity, especially focused on Catholicism. And we will talk about pipes. But if you are one of those people who thinks that just because I have the word pipe in the channel title, that all I need to talk about is pipes, then now's the time for you to find the door. You need to find the door. I would rather lose 10,000 subscribers because of this video and bring the number down to a level where I can weed out people who really don't care what I have to say about anything. Just weed it out. If people don't want to, if I'm going to be regulated to what I can and cannot say and what I can and cannot talk about on my own channel, then I think it's time for some people to find the door. You've already been finding the door, and I'm glad about that. This is not the place for everybody. If you want to seek popularity, then you don't need to be talking about the stuff that we're going to be talking about on this channel. Conservatism is not popular. The Catholic Church is not popular, especially in the United States. Talking about books in a culture where people don't read anymore is not popular. So I would just encourage you that, now I'm going to talk about some tough stuff. And we're going to get to some of that tough material at the end of this video if you hang around. But I would invite you to unsubscribe to this channel if you are not comfortable listening to Catholic material, Christian, conservative material. If you're not happy with me talking about books, particularly history books and Southern literature, this channel is not going to be trying to hide my admiration for the South, my admiration for the Catholic Church. We are moving forward. It's a new day. So, today's book that we're going to be talking about is Russell Kirk's Conservative Mind, published in the early 1950s. It was his doctoral dissertation at St. Andrews University in Edinburgh, Scotland. He got a doctorate of letters there, and this was the bulk of his dissertation. This is an extremely important production, an extremely important publication for anybody who's interested in the history of American conservatism. So I want to share some. Well, first of all, Russell Kirk, I've mentioned him on one or two previous videos that I've done here on this channel. And Russell Kirk was born in McCalsta, Michigan. He was from McCalsta, Michigan. And he tried to be an academic teacher for a little while after he finished his doctorate. He said he couldn't tolerate it. And that was in the late 1950s, early 1960s. Imagine how his what his opinion would be of the academic world now. So he spent the bulk of the rest of his life writing for various publications, writing a copious amount of books. His library in McCosta, Michigan is phenomenal. Wall-to-wall books in more than one room. But this is the book that catapulted, in my opinion, a serious conservative movement in the United States after the liberal ideology of Franklin Delano Roosevelt and the New Deal program. This is a book that catapulted a revival of conservative thought that ultimately culminated in the election of Ronald Reagan in the 1980s. So, this is Russell Kirk. I think that there are 6 canons of conservative thought. Listen to this. A belief in a transcendent order or body of natural law which rules society as well as conscience. Political problems at bottom are religious and moral problems. A narrow rationality, what Samuel Taylor Coleridge, what Coleridge called the understanding with a capital U, cannot of itself satisfy human needs. True politics is the art of apprehending and applying the justice which ought to prevail in the community of souls. So that's the first one. The second point, the second canon that Kirk wants to tell us about is this. This is quote, affection for the proliferating variety and mystery of human existence, as opposed to the narrowing uniformity, egalitarianism, and utilitarian aims of most radical systems. Conservatives resist what Robert Graves calls logicalism in society. Point number 3, and I'm not quoting everything here. I'm picking and choosing which parts of these points. I'm giving you the bulk of what he's saying. Number 3, conviction that civilized society requires order and classes as against the notion of a classless society. With reason, conservatives often have been called the party of order. If natural distinctions are effaced among men, oligarchs fill the vacuum. Ultimate equality in the judgment of God and equality before courts of law are recognized by conservatives. But equality of condition, they think, means equality in servitude and boredom. Everybody doesn't have the same condition, is what Kirk is saying. A man who has accomplished something in his life, who has become learned, who has proven ability, that's not equal to somebody who has never accomplished or built anything. There's not equality there. There's equality spiritually in the sight of God. There's equality in the mind of justice. But as far as condition, if a man has worked hard, if he has achieved something, he is worthy of the remuneration he receives for achieving those goals. He is worthy of respect. Somebody who has never built anything should never be given the same degree of respect as a man who has built much. That's the point. Number 4, persuasion that freedom and property are closely linked. Separate property from private possession. Separate property from private possession, and Leviathan becomes master of all. Economic leveling, according to conservatives, is not economic progress. No. A man is worthy of his hire. If a man has worked hard, he is worthy of the wealth that he has produced. If somebody wants to live in a box, doesn't want to create, they're not worthy of wealth received from government funds and government institutions. Number 5, faith in prescription and distrust of sophisters, calculators, and economists who would reconstruct society based upon abstract designs. Custom, convention, and old prescription are checks both upon man's anarchic impulse and upon the innovator's lust for power. So Kirk is essentially saying, without traditional customs, without a respect for previous generations, you have no guide, you have no anchor. Number 6, recognition that change may not be salutary reform. Hasty innovation may be a devouring conflagration rather than a torch of progress. Society must alter, for prudent change is the means of social preservation. But a statesman must take providence into his calculations. And a statesman's chief virtue, according to both Plato and Burke, Edmund Burke, is prudence. So at the end of this first chapter of the book, he tells us about the opposition. Remember, this is the early 1950s. All the same, in a hastily generalizing fashion, one may say that radicalism since 1790, now he's thinking largely of the French Revolution here, the radicalism since 1790 has tended to attack the prescriptive arrangement of society on the following grounds. So this is the opposite of conservative thought, according to Russell Kirk. Number 1, 4 points here. Number 1. Let's just, for the sake of brevity and understanding, just call these people modern liberals, not classically defined liberalism. Modern liberals, those who are often influenced by socialist and or Marxist tendencies. The first thing they believe in is the perfectibility of man and the illimitable progress of society. Man can be perfected. Progress has no end. Notice that there's no mention of God in here. Man can perfect himself. That's what these people believe. Radicals believe that education, positive legislation, and alteration of environment can produce men to be like gods. They deny that humanity has a natural proclivity toward violence and sin. That's, okay, Kirk, again, this is 70, 75 years ago. What he's saying about Marxists then it's not changed. Number 2, these people have contempt for tradition. Reason, impulse, and materialistic determinism are severally preferred as guides to social welfare, trustier than the wisdom of our ancestors. Formal religion is rejected, and various ideologies are presented as substitutes. Oh, that's exactly what we're living through now. If you don't believe in Christ, if you're not Christian, you come up with a substitute, your own secular faith. And those who say they don't have a philosophy, they have a philosophy. Your philosophy is that you think you don't have a philosophy. But there's always a secular faith that somebody wants to follow. Always. Whether it's Darwinism, whether it's secular humanism, whether it's the cancel culture crap that we're dealing with now. You do have a religion. You have faith in something. If nothing else, you have faith in the perfectibility of your own person. Number 3, political leveling. Order and privilege are condemned. Total democracy, as direct as practicable, is the professed radical ideal. Allied with this spirit, generally, is a dislike of old parliamentary arrangements and an eagerness for centralization and consolidation. Yeah. Number 4, economic leveling. The ancient rights of property, especially property in land, are suspect to almost all radicals, and collectivistic reformers hack at the institution of private property, root and branch. The rest of the book explains those various points in greater detail. I won't talk about them now. But that's a good book. Buy it if you can. I think it's still very much in print. Yeah, people hate folks who own a lot of land, particularly the Marxist. They hate folks who are Christian. They hate folks who speak their mind, who say what they mean and mean what they say. So let's pull back a little bit and let's talk about, I made a good, and of course, most of the stuff I do is good. I made a good podcast on Substack a couple of days ago entitled Defying Cancel Culture. I'm not going to repeat all the points I mentioned in that podcast episode, but if you want to hear it, you got to pay for it. Go to Substack, subscribe. You can listen to that podcast. Would love to have you do it. We've already got a lot of support over there, and I'm so thankful for it. So let's just talk about some other things here. I think a lot of what Russell Kirk was talking about in the early 1950s is still applicable today. And we can use the growth of the so-called cancel culture over the past 10 years as an example of that. Because over the past week, I've been receiving a lot of criticism for speaking out against a Canadian freak who has been provoking me and my family for the past 2 years. And most of the criticism is coming from cancel culture pagans. Cancel culture, what is it? I've been doing a lot of thinking about this because I've never really had to deal with this cancel culture force until recently. And so I've been doing a lot of thinking about it. And I've made several notes. And I continue to think about it. And here's what I've concluded is a good definition of cancel culture. It's a secular religion based in selfishness, the power of the state, and the blatant rejection of morality. Of morality as defined by God Himself. It's a rejection of God's law. It is in fact a precursor to totalitarianism. Since the late 1940s, a Marxist, now this is during the context in which Kirk is writing this book, by the way. Since the late 1940s, there's been a growth of Marxist academic and political elites who have successfully persuaded millions of Americans over the course of several generations now. They've persuaded them and they've told them how to think, what to believe, and how to behave as happy, feminized puppets of the state and the government. These people are puppets. So today, we're dealing with the result of decades of brainwashing. That's what we're dealing with. When speaking to proponents of cancel culture, as it is the forerunner of totalitarianism, keep that point in mind, it's as if one is not speaking to a person of free will at all. You're not speaking to a person who can actually think independently. If you hear that, that's my children outside of the study. Having children means that it's difficult to find a quiet spot anywhere, ever, at all. But I thank God for them. So when you're speaking to a cancel culture pagan, it's as if you're speaking to the voice of a godless ideology, which is the result of decades-long brainwashing, heresy, and manipulation. It's been going on for decades. I saw this when I was in college and grad school. It was very, very difficult for me to introduce any kind of historical interpretation in a classroom or in an academic paper that was remotely based on conservatism particularly traditionalist conservatism in the line of Edmund Burke and Russell Kirk and many Southern politicians over the course of the past couple of centuries. Very difficult for me to introduce that idea without receiving an immense amount of criticism. So why is this? And this is just an example. People all over the place are dealing with this. If you are remotely conservative, or if you are truly Christian, truly in a sense that you don't back down from what is absolute truth, you're not a crowd pleaser, you're not trying to make everybody happy. The pagan mob that wields the power of cancel culture for the sake of a false sense of moral superiority are no longer capable of independent thought. There is no point trying to reason with somebody who is not rational. They are in fact radical. So what fuels this? Well, fueling this tribal phenomenon is peer pressure, and the sad degree to which Americans are willing to sacrifice independence and dignity for the sake of being accepted by people who do not matter. Peer pressure has become an authority in modern culture, an extremely powerful authority. People who are trying to be independent thinkers really don't know how to do it. They don't know how to move forward with a life that's different from the norm because peer pressure is normalized. Peer pressure has now become something that we can fall prey to, all of us, if we're not careful, because it's become so normalized, and the social media world has only made that far more difficult than it has been previously. But we can get out of that. You got to have courage to do it. It requires a massive amount of courage. If you start trying to be a people pleaser, trying to make everybody happy, then you forfeit your right to be a leader. You forfeit it. You may as well just join the flock of sheep that you're trying to make happy and become one of them. You'd be much better off that way. Don't pretend to be a leader if what you really want to do is please people who do not matter. Don't even try to do it. So wokeism is the term that people are throwing around all the time now. Wokeism is nothing more than a godless tribe of pagan puppets. A godless tribe of pagan puppets. That's all it is. It is so insignificant. And yet we pay attention to it because we want to fit in. We're afraid of saying something that goes against the grain. We're afraid of marching to the beat of a different drum. Afraid. Fear. You have fear. Fear doesn't come from God. That's the devil. These people, and I've seen this over the past week or two from people who have tried to tear apart the Pipe Cottage piece by piece, because I said something publicly that should have been left private, but that's still what I think about the man. The only mistake I made was saying something public that should have remained private. I believe in calling a spade a spade. These woke freaks, that's the word keeps coming to mind, these freaks, these the members of the pagan mob, the only thing they know how to do is destroy. They don't know how to build anything. They've never built anything, and they will never build anything unless God shows them grace and they come to a saving knowledge of our Lord Jesus Christ, and they completely do a 180 and transform their life. That's not impossible, but you know, the Lord's a perfect gentleman. He's not going to force himself in a place where he's not welcome. Cancel culture people know how to do one thing. That's to destroy. These people know that they are failures at everything. They know it. They've been told that they're failures because they are. They can't do anything. They're failures. They can't create. They don't want to create. They want to tear you down. They don't want to create anything for themselves. Every person, I guarantee you this, every person who has made public comments against the Pipe Cottage brand, we're not going to mention individual people because I don't want to give them any greater following than what they already have. So all of them are just anonymous wackos for the sake of conversation, just anonymous wackos. They are little more than examples of a larger problem, just sheep, one sheep out of a larger flock. And so what are the commonalities between all these people? What's the common denominator? Well, it's a low common denominator. What's the common denominator among all these people? They can't create anything. They want to destroy. That's the common denominator. And it's interesting to me because I was thinking about this today and I was thinking, this is kind of scriptural. Scripture tells us that only God creates and the people who follow him. God has the power to create. Satan doesn't have that power. God created the world. Satan doesn't have the power to create a world. He doesn't have the power to create people. He doesn't have the power to create goodness. He does not have the power to create happiness or joy. All of that comes from God alone. That's it. There's no other source for it. So Satan and his minions, they know they cannot create. And here's what happens. They are incessantly seeking to devour anything that God and his people have built. Incessantly, without ceasing, they're seeking to destroy everything that God and his people have built. It's been going on since the book of Genesis. So if there's one small crack in a foundation, if a person makes a single mistake that can be capitalized upon, the cancel culture crowd will do the work of the devil himself. And they will seek the end result of death and destruction. That's what they'll do. You know how many people have criticized me because I've got a Confederate battle flag in my videos? I wish that I cared, but I don't, because I know that they cannot build an argument against it. I've seen people try, but they can't build an argument against it. They don't have the ability to do it. And they don't know that they don't have the ability to do it because they've been, the only thing that the cancel culture people can do is regurgitate the lies that they were taught in either school or college or by the talking heads and social media and on news media that they've been listening to their whole life. They don't know how to think for themselves. They are too lazy to do actual research, to research the topics that they're talking about. So they resort to trying to tear down things that successful people have built. And so this is the pattern that this is the pattern of evil. This is what evil does. And so I've seen this past week, and I've concluded that I'm just going to allow my resolve to increase fourfold. If God wants this channel to continue, there will be an audience. It may be a much reduced audience, but I would rather have 1,000 people who actually care to pay attention to what I have to say, rather than 36,000 or 100,000 who are simply here to feed my ego and my need for popularity. I don't need to be popular. I've never been popular. From childhood until now, I have always had detractors, and at the end of the day, the teachings of God, the teachings of Christ, none of this has ever been popular. I mean, Jesus told us himself, he said, if they killed me, then what do you think they're going to do to you? Why do you expect anything different? We all have our crosses to bear. So the Pipe Cottage is not going to, simply talk about pipes and tobacco. I'll make a pipe or a tobacco video every once in a while. I'm not going to change the name. One thing I do want, this has also been a source of a lot of problems. The YouTube pipe community. If you people, for those people who are devoted to that so-called community and you believe that my channel needs to follow the rules and regulations of your community, please unsubscribe. Please do not watch my content anymore, and please leave me alone. Just as Jefferson Davis said in the 1860s, when asked, what does he want? What does the South want? And his simple answer was, all we want is to be left alone. But I don't think that I'm going to have the luxury of being left alone as long as I still make videos that do not follow the popular paradigm. So, ladies and gentlemen, it has been a tough week, but I am marching forward through it. And if you want to make ugly comments to this video, you will be immediately blocked, and I hope you unsubscribe. I don't want you here. The good people who actually pay attention to what we're doing here don't want you here either. There are other lesser channels with people who have much less to say that you can enjoy, that do not require you to think and do not require you to get out of your comfort zone. So goodbye. Don't let the door slap you in the butt on your way out. But in the meantime, this is Alan Harrelson with the Pipe Cottage. I'm going to enjoy my birthday tomorrow. God bless you. Thank you for stopping by.